Welcome, Morty. So good to sit with you here
It's great to be here, Elie.
at Israel365 Studios. There's a lot going on in the world today.
Yeah.
And inevitably, it always surrounds the Jews.
Yeah.
Everything surrounds the Jews. But I do wonder if our conversation about what's happening in the news ends up being very superficial. Anti-Semites, right? You're a Christian, you're on the Jews team, and it gets very simplistic.
Yeah.
But I think that there's so much more here to unpack, to think through, because without a biblical understanding, then we don't really understand what's happening today.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's the number one principle of Bible study, is that when we're studying the Bible, we are not studying history. And I think that's the mistake that far too many people make. You know, we read these stories, whether it's of the forefathers, the foremothers, or the nation of Israel, the kings, the prophets, and we feel like it's a different world, it's a different planet, has nothing to do with us. But the reality is, anything that's in the Bible is eternal, right? Because there's a lot that happened that we're not told about.
Right.
Like, we don't really know what happened with Abraham before he turned 75. I would love to know. If it was about history, then
You should write that book.
Right? Wouldn't that be awesome?
That's
Well,
the next book.
yeah, the sages had a lot to say about what happened before he turned 75, but
What did they say?
we're not told. We're not told. We have all these different
I don't
legends
know
and
sages-
traditions.
What did they say?
They say some pretty amazing things, that how he discovered God, how he came to that conclusion, how he rebelled against his father, and Nimrod, the king, was thrown into a furnace of fire. All of it's fascinating, but none of it's in the Bible.
Right.
None of it's there, because we're only given what we need to know and what's relevant for every generation for our time right now.
Wait. Hold up. You're telling me that non-Jews don't know about the furnace?
That's pretty wild, right? And as a kid, as Jewish kids growing up in a traditional Jewish context in school, kids actually think that this is in the Bible.
Until right now, I thought that was in the Bible. Until right now. I thought like maybe I like zoned out when we read it every week. You know?
Yeah, no, it is not in the Bible.
It's not in the Bible. Okay.
It's that in that space sort of before chapter 12, somewhere, what happened between chapter 11 and chapter 12 of Genesis.
Yeah.
Right. We're not really told much of anything, but the sages say that Abraham rebelled against his father. His father had an idol shop, and when his father was traveling, Abraham took over the shop and ended up destroying all the idols in the shop. He was the idol shatterer. He was, in a sense, actually the atheist of his time, because he rejected the religious beliefs of the people all around him. And then his father brings him to King Nimrod for justice. And Nimrod says, what's going on here? How could you possibly destroy all of our idols? And since Abraham refused to bow down, he refused to cave, he was thrown into this massive furnace of fire. And miraculously, he walks in and he walks out unharmed.
So I got some things to ask you about idolatry, if that's all right.
Sure.
Are you open to that? I know it's not what you wanted to talk about, but we're doing this. We're going to have fun here. So today, I live in a city in Beit Shemesh. Okay, it's called Mishkafayim. All right, you can look it up on the internet. It's a small city, so maybe I shouldn't say where I live on the internet. But the point is that they're doing a lot of construction right outside of my city. And typically in Israel, as you know, when we do construction, who do we hire? Fake
Arabs.
Palestinians.
Yeah.
Right. Since October 7th, though, praise the good Lord, we're no longer hiring fake Palestinians to endanger the lives of our children when we fix the road. So it looked to me, this might sound very racist, but it looked to me like we brought over a lot of Indians, right? Love the Indians. They're amazing. This guy, he stopped me because a tractor had to drive in front of my car this morning, and he's like, "Hey, don't go." And he said, "Stop" in English, which was pretty cool because we don't live in America or India. But he said, and then he was super nice. But I was thinking, as the car was driving away, in India, they serve idolatry. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it gets into the question of Hinduism and Buddhism and
Right.
all these kinds of Eastern religions.
Uh-huh.
And are they idolatrous? Are they not? But there's some pretty fascinating traditions on these people and where they came from originally also. So this will take us in a whole different direction.
Great.
But I think it's really, really
My
fascinating.
goal is to go in a lot of. We're going to weave. You know the weave?
Weave it all together.
The Trump weave.
Sounds good.
It says we're gonna. It says I don't go on tangents. We have a conversation. We take a little bit over here. And then we weave it back in, and then we weave it over here, and then weave it back there. It's the weave.
So
we're gonna weave. We're gonna be weavers today, Rabbi.
Prepare to weave.
Prepare to weave.
This is really fascinating. Okay, where this whole East-West divide comes from, because this is really what you're touching on. We have the West. We have Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Whatever we believe in, we understand this general family of belief.
Yeah.
Right? There's a God, right? And God expects things from us. And what exactly is he telling us to do, right? That depends on whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim. But when it comes to the Far East, it's like a totally different framework.
Right.
The idea of like a God who's commanding you to do things, like it doesn't really exist.
Right.
Now, so where did this split in humanity come from? Now, this is fascinating.
Okay. You're saying there's a biblical answer to this.
There's a biblical answer to this.
Biblical answer to why the East serves idols.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
So if you go back to the beginning of the Bible where it talks about the Tower of Babel, now, you probably never noticed this before, but before it tells the story, at the very beginning, it says that they journeyed from the east. Okay? Mankind was centered more to the east, not Babylonia or modern-day Iraq. That's where the Tower of Babel was built. But they came from somewhere in the east. Now, why did they leave the east and come to the west, which was modern-day Iraq? What was that? It seems that there was, even before the Tower of Babel, there was a split in humanity. Some people stayed in the east.
Okay.
And others were unhappy with whatever was happening there, came to the west. According to the sages, it was this king Nimrod who led them. And then they came and they rebel against God and they build this Tower of Babel. Okay? But who did they leave behind in the east? They left behind people who were not interested in rebelling against God. They had a different way of seeing the world. And I think, this, we can understand the split in humanity goes all the way back to the very beginning. They all started somewhere to the east. Some stayed, and some left and came to the west.
Interesting.
Now, the people who came to the west were rebelling against God. Now, that means they acknowledge that God is here in the world. That means they acknowledge that God wants something from us. They just don't want to do it.
Right.
Right. So what does that sound like? It sounds, this rebellion against God, you can draw a line from the Tower of Babel literally to woke progressivism today, right? This whole rebellion against God, the whole woke progressive movement it's not just a question, do I believe in God, do I not believe in God? No, they are rejecting the Bible, meaning they're rejecting what God is telling us to do. Therefore, men and women, the distinctions between them, right? Homosexuality, all these different things that woke progressives are fighting on, rebelling about those things, right? It's all a question, it all comes from the Tower of Babel and rebellion. But what about the East? The East is a totally different culture. Is there woke progressivism in India or China or Japan?
According to these Instagram reels I get, where people go and ask about that, the answer is no. Although Japan, there might be.
If there is, it's minimal.
Japan, yeah.
There's basically, right, it's sort of like in Israel, when they talk about Judaism, there's no such thing as reform,
right.
Liberal Judaism. There's like 12 people,
right.
Who believe that. It might technically
Pretty
exist,
sure
but
that's
it doesn't.
the exact amount.
It doesn't
12.
strike roots into the populace. Woke progressivism doesn't really exist in the East.
Right.
Why? The people in the East are not people who rebel. They're the ones who stayed. They did not join King Nimrod. The whole culture of the East is not one of rebellion, right? The whole Japanese culture and the problem they have when it comes to building a strong economy and innovation is that everybody's afraid to speak up and get their boss angry, right? It's a totally different culture, not one of rebellion. So
well, another weave here.
Yeah.
Do we think they're Jews? Lost tribe, Japanese?
There definitely are some Jews in the East, but that comes later.
Okay.
That comes later.
Okay.
They come like after around the destruction of the first temple, when the 10 tribes were...
We do have a friend who, Harry, what's his last name? We have a friend who believes that the Japanese are one of the lost tribes.
It is possible. We'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay.
But just to understand, the people in the East did not join Nimrod. They did not join the rebellion of the Tower of Babel. So what was their struggle? Right? What was their problem? Not one of rebellion against God, but a much older sin. A sin that goes all the way back to the beginning of humanity. We're told we have Adam and Eve, and they have a son, Seth, who replaces Abel after Abel is killed. And then Seth has a son called Enosh. And the Bible tells us right then that Enosh is the one who kind of began religion. Now, religion itself is basically a response to when people forgetting about God. Adam and Seth, these are people who talk to God every day, like
Right.
they felt God's presence constantly. But already beginning with Enosh, mankind kind of distanced from God, and they started, that's when the whole pagan worship and idolatry began, right? The whole, because what is idolatry? Idolatry, I'm worshiping a sun, I'm worshiping the moon or the stars, because I'm trying to get close to God.
Right.
And so it implies a distance, a forgetting of God. And ultimately, where idolatry went wrong is because they were worshiping the stars because God created the stars as like a way that they could tangibly connect to God, but then they forgot about God and just worshiped the stars, right? So, but from the very beginning of humanity is not rebellion, but rather forgetfulness. And that forgetting of God is the major fundamental sin at the core of the East. What it's all about over there is forgetting God. They may talk about God, Buddha, they may say that there's some greater supernatural force, but it's impersonal. They don't believe in a personal God who speaks to us and commands us and guides us and interacts with us. They don't believe in that.
Okay.
And so the East has forgotten about God. They haven't rebelled against God, but they've forgotten about God. Now, the primary history of the people of Israel is in the West.
Right.
Right? And that's why Christianity comes from Judaism, and so does Islam, right? And all of that, all the struggles that we have with these religions, it's all within that context of rebelling. But the truth is, there's a whole huge part of the world, billions of people, who they're not rebelling. We just got to teach them to know God.
I never heard that. I like that. I like that a lot.
And that's the idolatry of the East. It's different than the idolatry of the West.
Right. Wow. Did you see the news?
That I see. Yeah.
The 46%, I think it's 46%, Hamas, young people. We have a big problem. Big problem. I think it's 46 or 43% of young people would support Hamas over Israel.
Yeah, this is one of the most terrifying news items of our time, of this whole year and a half since October 7th. And frankly, it's more terrifying for America than it is for Israel.
I mean, could you imagine an American president who's like, I like Hamas? Like how does that?
Right. It comes from this moral confusion, but also rebellion. Like it's hard to imagine something like this in the
Biden
East.
didn't even come out and say. Oops, sorry, didn't even come out and say that.
Right.
As behind closed doors, like.
Well, young people are the people of rebellion.
Right.
And the West is the society of rebellion.
Right.
And within the West, America is the culture of rebellion.
It's also
right?
the society.
Don't tell me what to do.
Right. It's also the society of victimhood. Everyone's a victim. Everyone's an oppressed people.
And that's a newer layer of cultural rot that has
Yes.
has now been placed upon America's fundamental culture. America
Right.
from the beginning was the opposite of that. Right? It was like you had to fight to survive. It was
Right.
like, I'm going to pull myself up on my bootstraps.
Right.
There's none of this like feeling bad for myself. But now we have this weird combination of, on the one hand, strong American rebellion type of, individualism. You don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right? And on the other hand, now this woke progressivism, which has brought this victimhood.
Yeah.
And kind of they're being mixed together in all sorts of weird and inconsistent ways. And that's what you're seeing with the young people of our time right now. On the one hand, they're rebelling against what they've been taught by their parents, and they're rebelling against all basic standards of morality.
Right.
Right. There's no we're going to support the murderers. We're not going to support the people who were murdered.
Right.
Right. Or raped. And at the same time, they're kind of doing it with an overlay of victimhood, which makes
Right.
it particularly obnoxious and sickening to watch.
How do we fix this?
Well, the answer, I think, is America needs Israel, right? Everybody always talks about how Israel needs America, that Israel relies on
Wouldn't that
America.
perpetuate this, though?
In so many ways.
Like how does America needing Israel solve young people hating?
So let me get there. Let me get there, right? So just to step back for a moment, right? People assume, right, that Israel needs America, right? Israel's small,
Right.
and America has weapons. America's got money. America's got the power, and that Israel without America can't survive. And there may be some truth to that, though, as the Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, has been talking about how Israel must become more and more independent of America to create a much healthier relationship.
Yep.
As we saw,
Yeah.
since you could have a Democratic president or any president who comes out and says,
Young jihadi president.
right, all of a sudden, we're not helping Israel anymore, arms embargo, Israel has to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
So everybody understands that there's this weaning
I have a plan
off.
for that, by the way.
There's
We'll
a
talk about
weaning
that
off
later.
that has to happen.
Yeah.
But the other way, I think, is less obvious to people, right? America right now is in crisis. We see what's happening with its young people. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The 43% or whatever who support Hamas. The most terrifying statistic in modern
Someone
American
should check
history.
that number. It
Right?
might be
Could-
36. I don't know. It was in that range. It was between 30 and 40.
Is that it's way too high for comfort.
Yeah. Higher than 1% is too high for comfort. But yeah.
So you have that problem. But then there's another problem that you haven't mentioned, which is societal in America, which is that America is not having enough babies.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's below replacement level, and the
Yeah.
truth is, it's true of the whole West, but even America,
Whole world.
right? Well, not the whole world, right? There's an exception to
Right,
that rule, right? There's some exceptions. We'll come to that in a moment, but America is not having enough babies,
Yeah.
and that comes from a society that's in cultural decline. Why? To have babies, it's a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah.
You got to have a vision for where you see the future going, that you think that there's something worth building, that it's worth sacrificing your time and your leisure to
Yeah.
have babies because you believe in your society and you want to, and you believe in a future for your country, so you want to have babies, right? A society that doesn't have babies is a society that's lost ethically, morally, culturally, and that's what's happening right now with America, right? If you have all these young people who are supporting Hamas, that's going to go together with a nation that doesn't have enough babies.
Right.
Right? It's the same problem.
So I guess that's good news. Because in a generation,
We'll have fewer Hamas lovers.
we'll have fewer Hamas lovers so
Yeah,
long
but-
as
but
they
it-
don't
that is-
repopulate.
That is not a good thing for America, big picture.
Right.
So why does America need Israel? And this, I think we need to change our way of thinking. Israel is the only first world country, right, in the world right now that is having more than enough babies.
Yeah.
Right, and which means that the people are not lost in Israel, that the culture is healthy. And this is true, even among the secular Jews in Israel,
Yeah.
there's a culture of children.
Yeah.
Right? Even those people who are not yet really living
Totally.
according to the Bible, and they're not fully there.
They're at least beyond replacement.
But they're having enough
Yeah.
children to replace themselves.
Yeah.
Because there's something in the culture of Israel that is very positive, forward-looking, and healthy
Well,
in the
it's
culture.
in the way people, it's in the way the system is built. Meaning, my favorite example is when we fly from here with my kids, two beautiful, amazing, wonderful children. When we fly from here to the States, my oldest is 3 years old, my youngest is 1. Okay? We fly here. It's like we go through security. They're like, because we fly at night because we want the kids to actually potentially sleep. So we'll go through security here, and it's like, oh, don't take the kids out of the stroller. They're sleeping. We'll get one of those little hand things. Likelihood that someone's flying with 2 kids, they're not going to blow up the plane. More likely, statistically, I'm going to guess. I'm going to make that up, but
Basic racial profiling.
right. So that's step one, right? And then in the airport, it's like there's a playground in the airport. In Ben Gurion Airport, there's a playground. It's like my son's favorite thing because he gets to ride around a little trolley thing and then watch Paw Patrol. It's like he's in heaven. He loves that place. He wakes up after security, to be up till 1 a.m. when our flight takes off to go play in the Paw Patrol playground. Forget the lounge. We got the playground at the airport. But then you land. And we always have to take a connecting flight when we land. So we'll land in JFK or Newark. And it's because you have to re-go through TSA. Another topic, by the way. Why do we have to do that? Why do we have to whatever? We could talk about it on another podcast, on the security podcast. But you get to TSA, and before you even go through the metal detector, they're like, take your kid out of the stroller. What? Why? They're like, we need to verify their face. You can't look in the freaking stroller. You can't look at their face in the stroller. And then don't forget it when you get to the metal detector. They're taking apart your whole stroller. Just basic societal things.
American culture is not focused on the future and focused on children.
Yeah.
So but there's also another element here, which is if you look at the young people, the same age where in America those people are supporting Hamas.
Yeah.
You look at those young people, 18 to 25 in Israel, and I think universally, everybody will say,
question.
It's not even a question. People will say here in Israel that this is Israel's greatest generation, meaning our youngest generation,
Gen Zion.
right, is our greatest generation. And so, whereas what we have now in America is this toxic mix of moral confusion and victimhood and children who are terrifying us.
Yeah.
In Israel, it's quite the opposite. And so when I say that America needs
And no
Israel,
work ethic either.
yeah, it's a big
Or
problem.
lack of any ethic.
It's a big problem.
But whatever. Yeah.
Right. Young people want jobs that are not so jobby.
Right.
Right. Or work that's not so worky.
Right.
Right. That's the,
Which,
you know,
as a business owner, I don't know why the hell you'd pay money for that.
exactly.
But-
you know, you're aging yourself here, Morty. You know,
What?
because now you're sounding like an old man.
I'm an elder.
That's right.
I'm a Gen Zion, right? Think
But
still, a little bit.
this is why America needs Israel, because whatever Israel's doing, America has to figure
But
out.
how does
and do.
Israel? America needs to look at Israel, but there's so much more that goes into changing a society, especially quickly. Like this is a ship we have to steer quickly, not like the ship that crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge the other night. You see that video?
Yeah, oh boy.
Yeah. So we don't want to be that, because the ship's about to crash.
No, America's in trouble, and so what has to happen, I think this is
And by
like
crash, I mean like 50 years. But
right,
like,
no, but it's a national emergency in America, whether or not people realize it. And the very fact that people
Elon gets it.
right, well, the very fact that people like Andrew Tate, who
Yeah.
are like such a disgusting, lowly person, who's encouraging young men to like beat up young women. The
Yeah.
fact that he's got millions of followers, are just another sign of
Yeah.
the danger in America right now, both on the left and on the right, everywhere. It's a very, very dangerous situation. I think there's got to be an emergency situation where thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of young Americans come to Israel. Right? We have in the Jewish community.
What, do you think
something-
like the U.S. government should pay, like do birthright for like
Right.
non-Jewish kids?
So just to explain what Birthright is to our Christian listeners,
Yeah.
Birthright is this incredible program over the last several decades in America where every American Jewish kid who has not been to Israel can get a free trip.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Yeah, it's really astounding. And to this day, they're happening right now, even during the war. These trips
Yeah.
are coming in. They get kids in college, and they bring them to Israel. And the question is, what kind of an effect is it having? But it's certainly having an effect, right? Many of these kids who really knew nothing about Judaism, nothing about their people, what it means to be a Jew. They came, they got connected in some way. Some of them actually took on a biblical lifestyle, a religious lifestyle, but others, they just understood they needed to be part of the people of Israel, the Jewish
Yeah.
people, and to marry Jewish. That was a very big deal. So you have many Jewish kids who've been born today because of their parents went on birthright. So this kind of a mass program is necessary for Christians. And I think that's really where it should start, because they're the ones who are easiest to save, right? They come from families that are healthy. Generally, they come from families that believe in God. And if these young people can see Israel, which it may not be their physical homeland like it is for Jewish kids, but it's their spiritual homeland.
Right.
And they can come and see where Christianity began, and they can see the example of God's people, the Jewish people, the chosen nation, who are meant to be a light unto the nations. If they can come and see that and connect with that and be a part of that, I think it can alter their lives. They can see prophecy being fulfilled. Right? It's one thing, to tell people, to tell kids in America, believe in the Bible, it's real. It's another thing to show them how real it is.
Here's where it happened.
And here's where the
yeah.
prophecies from thousands of years ago are literally happening at this moment, right? So young kids can
That's
see,
a
wait a second,
wild
the Bible
idea
is
that
real.
I've known you a little bit now.
We need it. America needs
It's
it.
a very interesting idea.
Yeah.
American teens come to Israel.
Yeah.
We could start an airline I'm thinking like a Jew here. We could start an airline just for that business alone. It's a lot of.
There are a few smaller programs like this, including Israel365. Like we're actually next week.
Promo.
Starting next week, we've got a whole group of young Christian leaders in their 20s who are
Right.
landing here in the middle of a war, right, in order to see precisely this, right? And this is going to be a biblical trip for them to really understand what they themselves believe, right? But there's also there are other organizations that do this, Passages, the Philos Project, but these are small numbers.
Right.
We need a mass program, because if we let things continue the way that they have been, right, where young people are increasingly lost, even when they're coming from believing families, right? America, it doesn't matter. We could say make America great again as much as we want, but this is what's going to make America great again, right? It's not just the economy, right? It's not just wearing a red hat, even though we like those hats around here.
Love those hats.
We love those hats, but that's not enough. To make America great again, first you have to make America biblical again.
Right.
And you've got to bring that to life.
Sorry to not necessarily disagree.
Feel free to disagree.
Okay, I'm going to disagree a little bit. Number one, at scale, that's a very difficult thing to do. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I can chat GPT this. I don't know how many teens there are in America. Less and less by the year. So I guess as time goes on, it becomes an easier problem to solve.
Right.
But at scale, we don't even know if Israel would have the capacity to pull off something like that. Like just the sheer amount of hotels, you know? There's got to be better ways. This
is not a short-term. This is not a short-term program. The way you start with something like this, if you could get funding in place, you choose a city, you find and where you can really concentrate the impact, and then see if it works. See what happens.
But there's got to be a better way to do this without flying kids 6,000 miles away.
Right. Well, the other way to do this is really part of the redemptive process, right?
Right.
It's another element here. It says in Zechariah chapter 8, that the day will come where there'll be 10 Gentiles, 10 non-Jews who will grab onto the shirt of every Jew and say, teach us.
Right.
Right. Now, we have to be careful how we speak here. We're not speaking here in arrogance, and we're not saying that it's the role of the people of Israel to make everybody into Jews.
It did happen to me once, by the way.
Where people grabbed onto your shirt.
Yeah, man. I was at the Kotel, the Western Wall, and I was leaving, and a man, very thick Arabic accent, comes up to me, and I feel something tugging, and I wear these tzitzit here. He's tugging at my tzitzit, and I'm like, what is happening? Am I about to be stabbed or something? Because I thought he was an Arab. He tells me he's a Christian Arab. He converted from Islam because he's they're all crazy. He's like, I converted. He's like, but I've never understood what these strings are. Can you explain it to me? And I was like, whoa, prophecy.
Right. Well,
I just need 9 more of you. And then we're building the Beit HaMikdash, the third temple.
So I've had this experience many times, and it's not just 10, it could be 50, 100 people in the room at once. I remember sitting in someone's living room in Dallas, a really nice home, and there were about 50 people there. I gave my talk for 45 minutes, and then, people started lining up.
Yeah.
And then for the next couple of hours, I had people in a line asking me questions to the point where at a certain point I just had to say to them, it's almost sundown. I need to go and use the bathroom. and I got to do my 10-minute afternoon service before I miss the time of the prayer.
Right.
I'll be right back. It was just.
Did they have to hold on to your tzitzit as they answered questions?
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. A lot of hugging going on. So I guess that's also, but there is a yearning now, not to make the world Jewish. People aren't looking to become Jews necessarily, and that's not really.
We don't want everyone. No offense.
We don't. No. You don't want. Also, we can't have the whole world coming in, becoming Jewish, and then getting all of our Jewish neuroses. We have enough, problems in our own right. We got to work through right now.
Totally.
So we don't need to make everybody Jewish, but
generational anxiety.
But there's a desire for
lactose intolerance. You don't want to marry into that. I'm gonna be honest.
we could use some gene pool diversification.
All right.
But
fair, actually.
we need a little bit of that. But there is a yearning among so many people today that they want to tap into what they see as this authentic tradition of the Bible in Hebrew, God's language, generation to generation, to really be able to understand what the Bible is actually saying. And I think that's something that Jews in Israel have to come to this place as well, right? Meaning the day's going to come where we're not going to be able to send Jews to work in high tech, or have Jews working in all these other kind of areas of commerce.
There's going to be no one working in high tech in a few years.
The rest we need.
It's going to be all AI agents.
The rest of the world can do that. There aren't so many Jews left in the world right
Yeah.
now. And most, they say there's 15 million. There's not really even 15 million Jews in the world. A lot of them aren't actually Jewish. So let's say there's 11, 12 million Jews in the world. Right? We need every Jew who has any capacity whatsoever to be teaching. Right, and that's really what's going to happen, right? When the redemptive times, which are here, but as they progress, each Jew has to go out there and share and teach, right, with the world. That's what God said He wanted us to be.
Right.
In Hebrew, we say it was in Exodus, Mamlechet Kohanim v'goy kadosh, that we're meant to be a nation of priests, right? And a holy nation. What does that mean, a nation of priests? The priests and the Levites primarily were teachers. They worked in the temple, but they were teachers. So we need to be a nation of priests, a nation of
Right.
teachers. And that will help America turn around, right? So you bring as many people as you can to Israel, maybe, the top young people to come and to be inspired and to see it with their own eyes. And then those people working in conjunction with the people of Israel can work together to bring these teachings to every last town in America and revitalize. We need to save America, right? This is, I'm a Jew, and Israel is my country, is my nation. But America is also a light unto the world, and a world with America in decline is a darker world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so Israel has a responsibility to help America.
I think people don't realize how fast it's going to get worse, especially with AI. Because the reason is because
What's going to get worse with AI?
Culture.
The culture. Okay.
The culture.
How so?
Young work ethic is already not great. And we can sit here and talk about, okay, is the AI boom, sorry to get techie here, but is the AI boom going to lead to mass job loss? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe there'll be an influx of jobs created, right? Because there'll be so many more businesses, because it'll be so much easier to start a business. There's less barrier for entry, because instead of hiring people and this and that, you just say, AI, make me a business, and it goes and does it, right? But if that is not the case, and we'll probably meet somewhere in the middle, right? Like someone, I forgot who it was, someone told me recently, they're like, yeah, people think AI is like the Industrial Revolution, where it's like we went from the horse and buggy driver became the cab driver. The reason why it won't be like that is because there just won't, that job disappears. It's not like it moves from the horse to the cab. There is just the job of a driver vanished.
Yeah.
So
I'm not so ready to get in a driverless car, by the way. For the record.
You will. They'll be much safer. This isn't the Morty Talks Tech podcast. But my point here, though, is that I'm very nervous that we're going to get to a point where there's going to be mass job loss, even if it's temporary, while like the world figures out like where do people fit in this new AI world where you can do things at a fraction of the cost, better, more efficiently, right? So it's going to be a mass job loss. Already seeing many companies slowing down on hiring because it's like, let's figure out like what how things work in this new AI world. There still are jobs, obviously, but what will happen then is when you have mass amounts of people who don't have jobs, all of a sudden things like universal basic income, socialism, communism, even in a way, become a lot more attractive. I'm sitting at home doing nothing. I don't have money. I need money to live, right?
It sounds like we should invest in video game manufacturers because all these guys are going to be playing video games.
Maybe or maybe not, because they won't even be able to afford to buy video games. But
Right.
but on a more fundamental level, like the problem that we have today is that all these movements, socialism, communism, even just breaking those out and just looking at universal basic income, they come with the baggage of anti-Israel, anti-religion, anti all of these things, and as we know, like all of these things are identity.
So
Right? It's all
basically
about-
what you're saying here is that however bad it is right now, it could get a boatload worse.
if people are out of jobs, yeah.
Yeah.
And this isn't me saying like we should stop AI for the sake. Like I think AI could actually benefit.
So you're saying that
This problem.
that really America and the whole West, the whole world could be heading off a cliff, and we've got to. If we already see that there's a crisis, but we've got to act a lot faster, and find a way
Yeah.
to provide meaning in the lives of all these young people. Because for most people, right, a job is identity. A
Right.
job is meaning. I think Viktor Frankl, he's famous for his man's search for meaning, but he also has a whole book about work and about jobs. And we know what happens, when people lose their job.
Right.
I remember there's this movie when I was growing up, way before your time, Morty, called Mr. Mom. Mr. Mom, about a dad who loses his job, his wife goes back to work, and then you see him falling
That
apart.
movie today would be a very different movie.
Right, you see him falling apart, he's drinking beer, he's watching daytime television, soap opera, he's falling apart, he's not taking care of himself, he's not shaving, right? Because once he lost his job, he lost his identity, and without an identity, we fall apart, we're
Right.
nothing. So we've got to help people find an identity. I don't know that we can solve certainly the two of us here, or even Jews and Christians who care, we can't necessarily solve the whole AI job collapse and that whole move. That's going to be a massive
I don't want to
worldwide
scare
phenomenon.
anyone by saying like that's for sure what's going to happen. Like,
No,
who
but-
knows? There could be millions of jobs created from this. I don't know, but like that's a real plausible.
But these things are, I think, to a great degree out of our control.
Yeah.
But what might be in our control, and what I think we have to take responsibility for, are providing young people with this identity, something deeper than a job.
And I think that's the key.
And that's really what this is. Are you, and I hereby predict, I don't know if it'll happen, in the next few years in my lifetime, but at some point, there's going to be two kinds of identity in this world. The kind of people who, no matter where they live in the world, identify with Israel and what Israel represents in the world, and everything that Israel stands for, and the people who reject it.
Yeah.
And those who reject it, I fear for them, and I fear for those societies. And that's what I think what this comes down to, and perhaps this is what the prophets speak about at the end times, right? It's not. I think the reason I make this prediction is because we see already, to a degree, this is happening. You can't go a day, without and you look at the newspapers and the headlines and the front pages. Israel's there every single day. You can't go a day without it.
Yeah.
Right? We're already at the center of consciousness, and this dividing line between those who stand with Israel and the Bible and God and all that is good in the world, and those who are on the other side of that. Right? It's becoming clearer and clearer. And so I think for all those who are out there, children, grandchildren, right, Jewish or not Jewish, right, because you have plenty of Jews who don't stand with Israel. Right? What's going to matter going forward is maybe less so whether you're a Jew or you're a Christian or any of those internal debates that we have amongst ourselves, but rather, are you with Israel or are you against it? That's
Right.
what it's going to come down to. And we've got to do everything in our power, not just leave it up to God, but we got to do everything in our power to make sure that our children and our grandchildren and that Israel and America are on the side of good and not the side of evil. But anyway, thank you, everyone.
Sounds like a nice way to end it.
It was a great way to get started here. Morty, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Rabbi Elie. This is great.
This is
an
fantastic.
honor to be here on your pilot episode.
All right, great to have you. An honor to start.
Where can people find more of this? Will it be happening weekly, monthly, daily?
Keep your eye on our YouTube channel, Israel365, and we'll see where this goes.